Hey guys, welcome to the Texas Beekeepers Association's channel, your source for trusted education and updates on beekeeping across the Lone Star State. I'm Tiffany Harlick. I'm a volunteer on our communications committee this year. TBA is a member-based organization that represents all Texas beekeepers and local beekeeping associations. We work with scientists, educators, beekeepers, honey packers, vendors, and others interested in the promotion of Texas beekeeping and real Texas honey. Our mission is to help both small scale and commercial beekeepers through education, promotion, resources, and collaboration. So please subscribe to the channel. And as we are gearing up for the 2025 Fall Convention, which is happening this November 21st and 22nd in Waco, Texas, we are interviewing all of our speakers. So our convention theme this year is Breeding Better Bees for Texas. So I'm so excited to introduce you guys to Cory Stevens of Stevens Bee Company in Missouri. So welcome, Cory. We're so glad to talk to you and bend your ear today. Thanks for being here.
Awesome. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, I have personally loved watching your YouTube channel, so I'm excited to get to see you live in person and get to ask some more questions. But just to kind of give everybody a taste and a flavor for what you're doing, would you give us a little background about how you got into beekeeping and queen rearing?
Sure. Yeah, whenever I was a little kid, my mom said that I should be an entomologist whenever I grew up, and I guess she was right. I ended up getting an entomology degree later in life. Moms are right
Mom
oftentimes.
knows best.
Exactly. I got into bees. Actually, my dad and my brother had bought some beehives as a business venture. Well, you know how beekeeping is. Sometimes there's a lot of work. Maybe the profit's not, mind blowing at times. They kind of lost interest in it a bit, and so I got in Dad's colonies just to check it out and see what was going on in there. And I was absolutely addicted after that. I was hooked. It was so awesome. I mean, it's like, all the frames are like a page of a book. You could see the brood, all the pollen they were bringing in. It was just awesome. And so, one thing led to another. I quit my day job last year of 15 years just to breed bees. So,
Yes, that's
yeah,
awesome.
it should come with a warning label, I think.
Right, absolutely. So, in terms of our theme for breeding better bees for Texas, how did you go from just beekeeping into queen rearing?
Yep. Really, I think I was ordering queens from a lot of the usual sources. At that time when my kids were little bitty, they've left the house now, but whenever they were little bitty, I was the only one working at the time. And so I had to convince my wife that this was a good idea and that all this money I'm spending, it's going to work out, it'll pay off. Some of the queens that I got, I was a little less than happy with, after you pay to have them shipped and all that. And, a lot of the issues I ran into was just typical issues beekeepers see: chalk brood, parasitic mite syndrome, mite issues, production issues, stuff that people run across all the time. I kind of got obsessed over genetics
Mhm.
and, it's like anything, whether it's tomatoes, fruit, whatever, some stuff is just naturally pest and disease resistant. And so I started obsessing over that with bees. I bought VSH breeder queens way back in the day. And
Mhm.
that was kind of the start of, I got really good at queen rearing and then later really started selection and breeding after that. But just queen rearing, it's cool pulling honey. Everybody appreciates honey, but whenever you grafted a queen and made a colony for her and placed her, and that colony just looks amazing, and you get to see her walking around in there, to me, that was even more gratifying than heavy honey supers, which is cool.
Right.
But yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. I've been obsessed with it for quite a long time. Learned a lot, still got stuff to learn, but I
Right.
love it.
I love it. Okay, so one thing he mentioned, guys, was VHS. So
Yep.
VSH, Varroa sensitive hygiene. So do
Mhm.
you want to talk a little bit maybe to the new beekeeper about what that means?
Sure, certainly. Well, this is something that the USDA bee scientists had figured out. I think it was in the late 90s. Beekeepers had given them colonies and they said, we don't know, something's up. These seem to be mite resistant. Well, upon closer examination, I don't know how they figured this out. I mean, I do, but it's crazy because I don't know that I would have figured it out. So they start looking through brood.
Mhm.
And they figured out that somehow these bees are preventing the mites from reproducing, which is mind-blowing. But they later found out that the bees are hunting these reproductive mites down. They'll smell them in the brood and they throw the pupae outside. So it completely disrupts the mite's life cycle. And I got hung up on that because it's a pretty powerful trait set. It's not something we gene spliced in there. It's already there in a lot of our honeybees. And so I just got hooked on it, really. And the thing is too, is it not only keeps your mite levels lower, but I never saw chalk brood again. Of course, no American foul brood. I noticed that some of my colonies that had parasitic mite syndrome, one of my buddies calls it string wing, where the worker bees, their wings just look like little pieces of yarn.
Yeah.
I noticed that whenever I replaced these queens, even if I hadn't treated them, they would clean that up. So I just thought they had some type of viral resistance. Well, I think what it actually is they can smell that those pupa are either infested with a reproductive mite or they're sick. If
Hmm.
something's wrong with them, they just throw them outside. So before that pupa hatches into a nurse bee,
Hmm.
goes around licking everybody's face, basically feeding everybody and
Hmm.
spreading that disease, they throw it outside. So not only do they keep lower mite loads, but they just don't have the viral and disease issues that you see in a lot of colonies. So it's just something I've been hooked on for a while. Not all VSH is created equal.
Okay.
They didn't release how to measure it for a long time. You had to read a paper, and then even reading the paper, it was still confusing. So I can share a bit about that at the conference. So you definitely want to come check it out. I was in John Harbaugh's breeding group. He's one of the bee scientists that figured this
Yes.
out, and he
Yes.
taught me how to measure it. You don't have to
Yeah.
get a lab coat or a PhD. So it's something you want to come check out. You'll definitely
Okay. All
learn the
right.
bees. Mhm.
Look, I'm a bee nerd. I got full body children. Oh my gosh. All right. So that's great. We're going to talk about Harbo and the Harbo assay maybe at the
Yeah.
conference.
Yep.
But for the first year beekeeper, this is kind of a big topic. And so I was wondering if you could maybe speak to it in a way that's maybe a little bit more basic in terms of here in Texas, we have cattle, we have horses, we have, of course, dogs, and we can think
Mhm.
about livestock in terms of breeds. But it's so wild the first time you start thinking about bees as livestock and breeding for certain traits. So I thought I'd hear your heart on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at anything, whether it's cattle, horses, dogs, there's certain breeds. Well, we have strains of honeybees, like Italians, Carniolans, Caucasian, that type. But really, if you start looking at VSH, varroa sensitive hygiene, it's not a breed of bee per se. It could be in any of those strains of bees. You just have to really select for it. So I
Mhm.
think more people are starting to do this. Um, I wish it would have caught on more in the industry by now, but I think, it's just like whenever Ford releases a new truck, if it's a new model year, sometimes they'll have some issues with it. So I think in the past, we said, well, hey, this is really cool. We should use this, but maybe it wasn't fully developed yet.
Mhm.
So I think that's why it hasn't caught on quite as much. But yeah, just I think as a beginning beekeeper, it's just something probably don't have to obsess over quite to the
Mhm.
degree that I have. But keep your ears open. If you're buying queens from people, if they're talking about hygiene, if they're talking about VSH, quiz them a little bit. If they're doing some testing and they're really producing something worthwhile, that's probably something you should prioritize buying from. If they've done the work to select these bees and you're buying queens from them, it just a lot of issues that you're going to encounter as a new beekeeper kind of just go away.
Yeah.
The brood
So
disease
this
and stuff.
topic is so important for the new beekeeper just for that reason, so that you can get off to success right from the beginning. So I love
Absolutely.
that response. Okay, so for those people that want to get involved in breeding or selecting their own queens, this may be a broad topic, but what are a couple of your favorite pieces of equipment or must-have tools? I know there's a million different ways to do cell builders or do your nuke mating nukes, but what are some of your favorite equipment pieces.
Yeah, definitely. I like to keep things standardized. So a lot of guys that are mass producing, commercial guys will use like baby nukes or
Hmm.
odd frame sizes to make them more efficient.
Hmm.
I'm not a large scale queen producer. I typically do cells and virgin queens. So I like deep equipment. All my brood chambers are deep, Doesn't mean you have to have deep equipment. If you're wanting something lighter, you can use mediums, but I really like 5 frame nukes for starting queens, for
Okay.
wintering queens. I'll add multiple stories to them even, and they winter so well. As far as grafting tools, if you're thinking about grafting your own queens, I'm kind of a queen snob, I'll admit. I'm picky about some things. I love a master grafting tool. And of course, my wife says that I would absolutely pick that one because it was the most expensive. She says I'm high maintenance. I disagree. But you can get away with Chinese grafting tools or German tools. Some people that do way more queen grafting each year than I do
Hmm.
love Chinese tools or love a certain tool. So my advice would be to try several,
Yeah.
whatever fits you, as long as you're proficient with it and you can transfer those little bitty tiny, very young larvae. If it works, it works, and you can
Right.
get some money too. Maybe your spouse won't make fun of you like mine did. So maybe a cheaper option would be okay in that instance. Um,
Have
as
you
far
ever done any cell punching, like the cell punching method? Have you tried
I
played with that?
I haven't. I
No.
know it's perfectly viable. My
Yeah.
issue is I use mainly standardized commercial stuff. I've got a lot of like plastic foundation.
Hmm.
So really you need wired or wax foundation where you could really punch through that
Yeah.
to make that really effective. And that's a good way to do it. You don't even have to move them.
Yeah.
Whenever you're messing with grafting, you're moving larvae around. That's one way to minimize that and minimize the equipment you would need. Yep,
Yeah.
certainly. I don't do that here, but there's a lot of ways to raise queens for sure.
Right. Okay. Perfect. Let's see. So you talked about making a little money back. This is
Yeah.
a hard question to answer.
Mhm.
How should we be pricing our queens? Let's say somebody wants to get going. Maybe they have proven stock, maybe they don't. At what point what's your starting point
Yeah,
for
that's a great question. I mean, I stopped selling open mated queens in the past. This is one way to think about it.
okay.
So I'm in Missouri, so maybe my season's not quite as long as yours. I basically have April, May, June that I can produce queens. I
Okay.
was selling open mated queens, this was well over a decade ago, for 30 bucks. And I
Hmm.
thought that I was kind of high end at the time. I was using VSH stock that was really good. And then I realized that over that, I would let them sit a minimum of 3 weeks. So let's just say I had a nuke. I'm going to look at what I can make out of that nuke to keep it simple. I
Hmm.
could get basically 3 rounds out of that if everything went perfectly,
Hmm.
which it's beekeeping, and we know that everything doesn't always go perfectly. So I could
Right.
make 90 bucks in 3 months.
Okay.
Nukes at the time were going for like 175 or
Hmm.
so in this area. And so I was like, why would I work for 3 months selling the heart out of the watermelon? I love watermelon. That's the best analogy I could come up with. 'Cause the queen is like, that's it, especially if you're into genetics. She is the sole source of it. All the bees that accompany her are kind of backup singers, really. So I felt like I was better off to just sell the nuke. So my advice would be don't sell them cheap, especially if you're doing something unique with some unique
Mhm.
genetics and you're not mass producing. Of course, the more you produce, people want to buy volume. You're going to have to give them a bit of a price break. If you're a small scale producer, don't sell your queens cheap. As far as what exactly, I mean, if you look at the internet, they'll range from 40 to 60,
52 to
65.
thousands. Yeah. I mean,
Exactly. I know Man Lake, I was looking on there and I was thinking they were over 60 bucks
yeah.
potentially. So if you're doing something cool with genetics, you got a nice local strain or
Mhm.
just solid bees, just don't sell them too cheap. I mean, you want to take care of your customers, but at the same time, if you're not profitable, it's not going to be sustainable. Your wife's going to want you to be at home instead of stick looking through beehives, and it's got to be worth it. Gotta be worth it.
Good advice. All
Yeah, I've
right.
lived it the hard way. I've done all the things wrong. So
Okay, I have one last question, and then I want to talk about your talk before we wrap up. So,
cool.
is there anything I love? One thing I absolutely love about beekeeping is the networking, the stories we share from our own experiences. Right, the bees don't read all of the books that we enjoy reading.
Oh, true.
And so, is there any personal story, some special experience that might not be in the books, or something unique about your operation that we could learn from here in Texas? Anything that it would take to help somebody have some success and just have that personal story connection.
Sure. Yeah, actually, I've been rearing queens for quite some time, and maybe it's in a book somewhere. I know.
Yeah.
But one thing I figured out kind of the hard way is like if you're gonna raise queens and you're gonna set up a cell builder, there's
Hmm.
a lot of recipes for making one or setting one up. But
Hmm.
one thing that I really found was if I follow the bee's lead, like people ask, when do I start queen rearing? Well, it varies, it just depends on the year. But the
Hmm.
one primary indicator I look for is when the bees start raising queens, and specifically that colony. So if I'm making a cell builder, I
Hmm.
don't boost them. I don't add brood. Occasionally I will. You don't
Hmm.
necessarily have to, especially if you're on a hobbyist level or a medium size level. If you just look for those colonies that are starting to swarm and use those as cell builders,
Hmm.
you're going to get a lot better results. So, like if you stuff the same amount of bees or more bees in there and
Hmm.
you're comparing them to a colony that's already big and strong and triggered to swarm, typically the ones that's already, no surprise, already wanting to make queens and already starting to are going to give you better results. You don't have to convince them per se because they're already wanting to swarm and I took their queen away. So now there's basically three reasons that bees will raise queens. There's emergency, so their queen's gone.
Hmm.
There's swarming urge, which natural reproduction, or supersedure. I'm using two of the three. So
Yeah.
we can touch on that at the conference and pick that apart.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's just my cell builders are a little bit different. Can you boost a colony? Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you've got access to bulk bees and stuff in Texas, man, you can really
Stimulate
make
them.
them big. But I don't have access to that around here, and some people may not. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's one thing is kind of follow the bees lead. Whenever they tell you it's time to raise queens, that's when I go. Whenever they're really drawing it back, not a lot of nectar and pollen coming in, they're not wanting to swarm as much, I usually stop. You start paddling upstream.
That is such good advice. And therefore, you can't really narrow it down to a certain date. You're just following nature,
Yep,
following weather, following the bee's lead. And that is hard for the consumer to understand, whether it's honey or queens or anything that we're selling from the colonies, right? So there's a level of education, I think, that goes in any sort of beekeeping sales activity. So
absolutely.
okay, so guys, Corey's talk is VSH, SMR Selection in honeybees. And so we talked about what VSH is, but will you introduce SMR?
Yes, absolutely. So I mentioned earlier that the USDA bee scientist had figured out that somehow the bees were shutting down mite reproduction. So that was their original term for it was SMR or
Hmm.
suppressed mite reproduction. I still like that term because we've found through scientific literature it's not always hygienic removal. There's other ways, like a
Hmm.
brood effect per se, that the bees can suppress mite reproduction. And if
Hmm.
you're measuring VSH, you're technically or if you're getting a VSH score, you're technically measuring SMR. You're
Hmm.
technically measuring the bee's ability to suppress mite reproduction.
Hmm.
That's how you get a VSH score. So they're kind of joined at the hip. So I hate to add too many acronyms,
Yeah,
to where people are like, what in the heck is he talking about? But I feel like they're both applicable. And you
yeah,
really want to show up to this conference because we're going to deep dive on this. We're going to pick it apart, and I'll tell you everything that I know about it, and how to measure it basically, and how to test for it. So if you want to check it in your own bees and you think they may have something to them, or you want to develop a Texas strain of VSH,
yes,
you'll
we
want to
do.
catch this for sure.
That's awesome. Cory, we are so excited you're coming to Texas.
Me
Hope
too.
everybody, yeah, I mean, everybody just wants to give you a big Texas welcome. We are so honored and thrilled to learn from you. Thank you for spending your time with us today. I'm sure we'll have some questions in the comments. I'll make sure that we tag your account. And
Cool.
also, I really liked the video you did on cell raisers. So
Hmm.
I'll include that in the link. And guys, you can find Cory at stevensbeeco.com. It's Stevens with a V. And anything else you want to share with Texas Beekeepers before we wrap it up?
No, I'm looking forward to the conference too. If you're thinking maybe, I don't know, you should come to the conference. I think it's going to be really good. You've got Sue Kobe showing up, Megan Mahoney's down there in Texas a lot. I saw an email just pop up from her a second ago. She's a wealth of information.
Mhm.
It's going to be a good conference. Really, you should come and check it out and say hey.
Awesome. Thanks, Cory. We'll see you guys in Waco.
See you in Waco.